There's a kind of silence most men don't talk about. It starts in the locker room, when we're young. Laughter, bravado, the casual comparing, and somewhere in the middle of all that, a quiet question begins to form. Not spoken, just there. Am I enough? For some, it fades. For others, it stays tucked behind the belt buckle, showing up at the worst times. In moments of love, in the glow of vulnerability, or when the lights go out and intimacy becomes real. And in that silence, some men begin to carry a weight that doesn't belong to them. I remember a man in his late 60s, good man, married nearly 40 years. He came into my office not for pain, not for dysfunction, but for something far more difficult to name. He said, "Doc, I've spent half my life believing I wasn't man enough." Now, here's the thing. Biologically, he was average in every sense. Functioning well, healthy. But what he felt inside told a different story. It wasn't his body that was wounded. It was his image of himself. I'm Dr. Thomas Leighton. For over 4 decades, I've sat with men, military men, miners, mail carriers, grandfathers, men who'd given their best years to everyone but themselves, and many of them quietly questioned whether they measured up. If this message speaks to something you felt but never said, type 1. And if you're not sure how you feel yet, type 0. Either way, I'm grateful you're here. Because what you're about to hear isn't about judgment. It's not about shame either. It's about pulling back the curtain on something most of us have wrestled with and never named out loud. There's a story we've all been sold, that size equals power. That bigger means better. That it unlocks confidence, pleasure, and effortless masculinity. But I want to gently ask, who gave you that story? And have you ever paused long enough to ask if it's even true? Let me tell you something that most younger men don't hear, but that older men quietly come to understand. Sometimes, what we wish for in our youth comes with a price we don't see until it's too late. Over the years, I've treated men with what many would consider ideal size, and I've seen firsthand how that very size led to unexpected consequences. One of them is a condition few talk about until it happens: penile fracture. Now that may sound extreme, but it's more common than people realize, particularly among men with longer length. You see, during intimacy, a larger penis creates more leverage. And if the angle is wrong or the motion too forceful, the structure can tear. Not a bone, but a sheath, a fibrous layer called the tunica albuginea. When that sheath rips, it comes with a pop, immediate swelling, and pain that'll drop a man to his knees. And unless it's treated quickly, it can lead to lifelong complications, curvature, painful erections, and sometimes complete loss of function. It's not said to scare. It's said because no one ever tells men what they're chasing might cost them what they already have. I had a patient, retired, mid-70s, had dealt with that very injury. He looked at me and said, "Doc, I always thought more was better, until I couldn't use it at all." The second truth is one that catches men later in life: medical complications. Urological tools, scopes, instruments, catheter lengths, they're built for the average male anatomy. The more a body deviates from that, the harder it becomes to receive care. I've had to perform procedures where just navigating the anatomy became a challenge, not because of a condition, but because of proportion. One gentleman I treated for an enlarged prostate, a very common procedure for men over 60, had an unusually long penis. What should have been a routine surgery turned complex. His recovery took longer. His discomfort lingered. And after it all, he said, "I used to be proud of it. Now it just feels like a burden." He wasn't bitter. He was just tired. Tired of the assumptions he'd carried. Tired of the consequences no one warned him about. And here's the quiet truth of aging. At some point, what matters isn't how we appear, it's how well we function, how gently we move through our day, and whether our bodies still feel like home. Which brings me to something harder. Something that touches not just the body, but the soul. The psychological burden of never feeling big enough. I've had men break down in my office, not from illness, but from a lifetime of believing they were less than. One patient, average by all clinical standards, spent years saving money for enlargement surgery. He traveled overseas, and when he came back, He had nerve damage, erectile dysfunction, and a partner who no longer recognized the man she fell in love with. He told me, "I wanted to feel more like a man, but now I don't feel like one at all." That is the tragedy of false promises, of measuring your worth by a number, of thinking the solution to insecurity is altering your body rather than healing your story. Now, if you've been with me this far, I thank you. And I want to say not everything you've heard about size is true, and not everything you've felt is yours to carry. There is a better way to feel confident, and it begins not with changing your body, but with changing the way you see it. And sometimes that shift begins in the most unexpected ways, not through action, but through awareness. One man, I'll call him Raymond, came in not because of dysfunction, but because his wife had started withdrawing from intimacy. He was in his mid-60s, healthy, still strong, still attentive. But after months of gentle distance, he finally asked her, "Is it me?" And what she told him broke his heart. "It hurts," she said. "I just didn't know how to tell you." You see, Raymond had always believed that his larger size was a gift, a sign of his manhood. He'd never imagined it might actually be causing pain. But over time, that pain had turned into distance, fear, and silence. This brings us to the fourth truth. 1. No magazine cover or late-night joke will mention the burden of hygiene and daily inconvenience. Now, this isn't a glamorous topic, but it's real. And if you've lived it, you know. Using public toilets becomes a chore, positioning yourself carefully, avoiding unwanted contact with unsanitary surfaces, adjusting posture in tight stalls. What begins as an awkward moment can become a source of daily tension, especially when traveling or trying to keep a low profile. It might seem like a small matter, but repeated day after day, it chips away at your sense of freedom and ease, and that's something no one warns you about. When society glamorizes size, it rarely talks about the reality of living with it, and that reality includes emotional distance, too. Because here's the thing. Intimacy isn't about size. Not really. It's about connection, trust, comfort. And when that comfort is lost, so is the closeness. Which brings us to one of the most unspoken truths of all, what I call the psychological barrier of excess. When a penis is significantly larger than average, what was meant to bring two people together can unintentionally drive them apart. I've had couples come into my office in total silence, the woman avoiding eye contact, the man confused and hurt. Only after slow, careful conversation does the truth emerge. Intimacy has become painful, not emotionally, but physically. And yet neither knew how to say it. There's shame on both sides. For her, shame in saying that what is supposed to be desirable actually causes her pain. For him, shame in feeling rejected by what he thought was his strength. I've had women quietly admit that they need painkillers after sex. Others say they've come to dread it, not for lack of love, but out of fear of injury. And the men? Many are devastated. "I thought this made me a better lover," one said. "I never imagined it was hurting her." You see, the real tragedy isn't the size itself. It's the silence around it. And that silence is sustained by a society that still clings to outdated beliefs that the bigger the better, and that women must simply adapt. But the body doesn't adapt through pressure. It adapts through care, through communication, through attentiveness. And sometimes, yes, sometimes through letting go of the fantasy you were sold, in favor of the reality that lets love flourish. There's a quiet moment in this story I want you to hear. A man in his 70s, thoughtful, humble, once told me, "Doctor, I may not be the ideal man in every woman's eyes, but I am the ideal man in my wife's eyes." That sentence stayed with me because it revealed something deeper than size, deeper than performance. It revealed presence, attunement, devotion. And those, my friend, are the true markers of masculinity. Not inches, not volume, not comparisons, whispered in changing rooms, or posted on internet forums. It's the way you reach out when she's scared. It's the steadiness in your voice when you say, "We're okay." It's how you respond when things change, and you stay. Now, if you've carried thoughts like, "Am I enough?" Or, would life be better if I were bigger? I want to remind you gently, your worth was never meant to be measured with a ruler. It's measured in your willingness to be seen as you are. To offer love not just with your body, but with your presence. To hold your partner not just physically, but emotionally. There are men with impressive size who feel utterly alone. And there are men with modest size who've built lifelong, fulfilling partnerships full of joy, laughter, and deep trust. So what does that tell us? It tells us that the real question isn't, am I big enough? It's, am I present enough? And you, my friend, if you're listening this far, you are already answering that question. Because presence takes courage. Presence takes self-respect. And presence heals what size never could. If you're finding this message helpful, or if it's making you reflect a little differently on your own journey, I invite you to subscribe. Not because numbers matter, but because sometimes it's nice to stay connected to messages that help us feel seen. You don't have to change your body to feel whole, but you may have to change the story you've been telling yourself about what makes you a man. And that starts here. And once that story begins to change, something else softens. Not your body, but your posture toward yourself. A man once told me, "It's like I've been clenching for decades, trying to hold it all together, trying to measure up. And now, I just want to breathe." That's what happens when the pressure lifts. When you stop seeing your body as something that must prove itself, and start seeing it as something worth caring for. You see, most men don't arrive at this understanding in their 20s or 30s. It comes slowly through marriage, through heartbreak, through aging, through the quiet moments after everyone else has gone to bed, and you're left alone with your thoughts. And that's when the question creeps in, not shouted, just whispered. Was it ever really about size? I want to speak directly to something many older men carry, and often don't name. The weight of comparison. You might not be scrolling through social media like the younger generation, but the comparisons still creep in. Through memories, through movies, through old jokes you never quite laughed at. Maybe you've seen someone younger, more muscular, more confident, and felt a flicker of self-doubt. Maybe you've looked at yourself in the mirror and wondered, would she want me if she saw me now? And to that, I say this, she already sees you. Not as a number, not as a measurement, but as the man you are when you choose to show up fully, honestly, imperfectly present. You see, I've had countless men over 60 say something like, I don't need fireworks, I just want to feel close again. And that desire for closeness is not weakness, it's strength. True intimacy isn't measured by size or stamina, it's measured by trust. By the way you hold her after an argument. By how you listen when she doesn't know how to ask for what she needs. By how you stay even when your body feels slower than it used to. There's no metric for that. But there is memory. And when you live with care, that's what she remembers. Let me offer something practical here too. One of the most powerful ways to restore connection, not performance, but real connection, is through gentle touch without expectation. Harvard Health has published studies on the importance of non-sexual physical contact in long-term relationships. A hand on the shoulder, holding hands on a walk, a brief hug in the kitchen. These small gestures release oxytocin, the body's bonding hormone. They calm the nervous system. They create safety. Try it tomorrow. Don't reach for more. Just reach gently. Then notice what shifts. Not just in her, but in you. Because the body remembers what the mind forgets. We're not built for constant performance. We're built for connection. And sometimes, connection is restored not in the bedroom, but in the hallway, in the grocery store. In the quiet glance you offer without needing anything in return. Now, if you've ever questioned your size or your worth, I want to offer you something honest. You were shaped by a culture that trained you to compare. That taught you to measure, rank, and chase. But real manhood isn't something you win. It's something you live. And you don't need to change your body to be loved. But you may need to change the voice you've been listening to. I once had a patient in his early 80s. He'd been widowed for some time and was beginning to date again nervously, cautiously. He came in not for dysfunction, but for clarity. He looked at me and said, "Do you think it's too late for me to feel close to someone again?" I smiled. leaned in and said, "It's never too late for closeness, but it does require honesty. Not with her, with yourself." He paused, then nodded. "Then I think I'm ready." That man didn't need a bigger body. He needed a lighter burden. And that's what I wish for you. Let go of what was never yours to carry. Let go of the myth that size defines intimacy. Let go of the thought that your best days are behind you. Because the truth is, there's more ahead. More warmth. More stillness. More knowing glances. More mornings when you wake and think, I may be older, but I feel present in my life. And here's something else no one tells you when a man begins to accept himself. Others begin to feel safer around him. That's how love grows. That's how intimacy deepens. That's how long marriages rediscover what they thought they'd lost. Not by adding more, but by dropping what no longer serves. I once asked a patient what changed after he gave up trying to impress his wife and started simply paying attention to her. He looked down, smiled, and said, "She reached for me again." Just 3 words. But inside those words was a lifetime of healing. So if you followed me all the way here, you're not just curious, you're ready. Ready to stop comparing. Ready to begin caring for yourself, your partner, your body. So I'll say this plainly. You are enough. Not because you've reached some ideal, but because you're willing to meet yourself honestly, gently, with compassion. And if this message touched something inside you, share it quietly, as it was shared with you. Not to prove anything, but because maybe, just maybe, there's another man out there tonight, still carrying a question no one ever helped him answer. Be the one who helps him put it down. You don't need more inches. You need more truth. And that truth starts with how you see yourself. So place your hand on your chest, feel that steady beat, and whisper, if only to yourself, I'm still here, just as I am, and that's enough. That's not just the end of this story. That's the beginning of a new one.